It's a really horrible and difficult time for Jewish people here in the UK and around the world, especially in Israel. And I think that watching what's going on in Israel, watching effectively pogroms carried out by the Palestinian terrorists from Hamas who infiltrated the country has been heartbreaking enough. But then for Jews in the United Kingdom and elsewhere around the world, that we saw also in Sydney yesterday, a protest where they were calling for Jews to be gassed. I think seeing those things happen it's not just heartbreaking because it harks back to a very dark period of our recent history, but it's heartbreaking because we know that they mean it. What happened in Israel was the rape, murder, beheading of men, women, children, babies. Today we heard reports that now that the Israeli army have cleared Kfar Aza, one of the kibbutzim near the border, they found 40 dead babies, some of them beheaded. Has that been
confirmed?
One of the reporters from the station that I work for in Israel had reported it on the channel. I haven't been there myself, but this is the report. As with all these things, we need to take everything and try and make sure everything is accurate. But certainly, I've seen videos online. Most viewers won't have seen the videos that Hamas themselves put out because they're far too brutal and disgusting to show. We
actually can't show them here on GB News. There may come a point where we have to, if this escalates and continues. I
think we got used at one point, to seeing ISIS beheading videos, for example. Those were on the news. This is really in the same vein. I've seen some really horrific things in the course of the last couple of days reporting on this as a journalist. People being killed with an axe, children made to watch their families being killed before they're killed, old women, some possibly no longer with it anymore, suffering from dementia or other illnesses, being taken hostage into Gaza. The lifeless body, possibly dead, of a woman who had presumably been raped from the appearance, being spat on in Gaza. This is truly horrific.
This is pure racial hatred, isn't it?
Well, as far as one can see, Hamas is motivated by hatred of Jews. Their own founding charter makes it very clear that they don't believe in any form of negotiations. They don't believe in any form of struggle for their own liberation other than jihad. And I brought a few quotes with me just so that I could tell you it's not just my opinion, it's their founding charter. Article 7, the day of judgment will not come about until Muslims fight the Jews. When the Jew will hide behind stones and trees, the stones and trees will say, "Oh Muslims, oh Abdullah, there's a Jew behind me, come and kill him." Article 8, Allah is its target, the Prophet is its model, the Quran its constitution, jihad is its path, and death for the sake of Allah is the loftiest of its wishes. Article 13, initiatives and so-called peaceful solutions and international conferences are in contradiction to the principles of the Islamic resistance movement. Article 28, Israel, Judaism, Jews challenge Islam and the Muslim people. It's chapter and verse.
Now look, they would say, there are some in Palestine would say that Israel overreacts.
I'm not sure what a suitable reaction is for a founding charter that wants
Hamas. That's Hamas. We can't. Are you saying we can judge all Palestinians by Hamas? Surely you're not saying that.
Of course, I'm not. No. There is also, for example, Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority and Fatah, who are seen as the moderates. But last year, during a news conference with the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Berlin, he said that Israel had carried out 50 massacres, 50 holocausts. The Chancellor himself of Germany was disgusted by that.
The pro-Palestinian wing see it. And there are many in this country who are sympathetic to, as they want a two-state solution, they're sympathetic to Palestine. And I understand that. That's a perfectly legitimate argument. What is not legitimate is to go on the streets and celebrate acts of bestiality. And that is what's going on. But, Jonathan, what does Israel do now? You see, I'm not normally a fan of William Hague, but I thought what he wrote today in the Times was very interesting and very much in line with the debate we had here last night, that Hamas are provoking Israel, expecting an extreme response, wanting to bust apart the Abraham Accords, the potential deal that was going on with Saudi Arabia. What does Israel do now?
I think at the moment Israel has really no choice about what to do. because of what happened to its civilian population, it has to try to eliminate the risk of Hamas being able to do this in the future. It has to try to get back as many of those hostages. There's something like 100, possibly more, Israeli civilians currently presumed to be held hostage in Gaza. Some will be dead, some will be in a terrible condition, all of them without medications they might be on, elderly people, young people. There are nursing babies there without their mothers, without breast milk. They need to get those people back as best they can. And they just need to make sure this can't happen again. We've seen a cycle of wars with Gaza.
So the Israeli army go into Gaza and try and hunt these people down?
Well, I can't predict exactly what will happen, but that is everyone's best assumption. But of course, that means that Hamas won't just be this time using the Palestinian people as a human shield. They'll also be using Israeli people as a human shield because they have hostages from Israel who they've said they're keeping in tunnels. They're going to be putting them right where Israel might want to strike to get rid of terrorist infrastructure.
And we've got this in Gaza. I mean, what about the West Bank? You know, one of the great cries from the Free Palestine campaign is that West Bank has been illegally occupied. How do you respond to that? And are we going to see problems there too?
I think all of us would like to see a world in which Palestinians and Israelis can live side by side. They can each have a fulfillment of their dream for self-determination, to live in peace. But I don't think what we've seen just now has really put us any closer to that. I think that Hamas has set back the cause of Palestinian statehood, nationhood by decades. But I must also say that none of this is new. It may be shocking for the moment, and that's because for the last 20-odd years, Israel's been quite successful at stopping these kinds of attacks. But I'm old enough to remember the 80s, the 90s, when Jews and Israelis were being blown up on buses, in restaurants, in cafes. Civilians were once again targeted for slaughter because of their Israeli/Jewish identity. And I think that there has been a period of maybe a couple of decades when that's been less frequent because of Israel's constant efforts to protect its
many
population.
Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli army too. I mean, the killings on both sides.
Well, the situation is horrible. I think that it's interesting because, you know, there's been a lot of criticism I've had online of calling them terrorists, saying, well, the Israeli army are the true terrorists, and how can you call one side terrorists and the other side not? And of course, I think any right-thinking person who's upset by the death of civilians on one side is upset by the death of civilians on both sides. I don't want to see any innocent civilians, innocent people being killed. I will say this, the Israeli army doesn't go door to door in areas of pure civilian population, throwing grenades into people's homes, raping, pillaging, beheading babies, as far as we've heard. They don't go into music festivals of Palestinians, block all the exits so that when they try to drive out and escape, they can torch their cars. Some of the bodies, over 200 bodies in that music festival, are so badly charred that in order to get identities of the people, they've had to go... I spoke to a mother who had to have a DNA sample of hers taken to see if they could try and identify
we spoke to
children.
a survivor of that festival last night. Final thought, and this is not an easy one for the police, and I get that. Should they be doing more to stop some of the things that were being said on London streets last night?
Well, clearly the Home Secretary thinks so because of this letter. Other members of the Cabinet have spoken out too. And I think the Jewish community is very grateful for that because for years, many people in the Jewish community have felt that there hasn't been a tough enough response. We're used to these kind of protests, which can often be very scary and do make Jewish people feel very uncomfortable in their own cities. We're British citizens. We have every right to be protected like anyone else. I think that if the police take note of this letter and if the politicians are serious about encouraging them to do so, maybe this will be the beginning of enforcing the actual law, which is to say that support for Hamas is illegal.
Hamas, ISIS, any of those prescribed organisations. Jonathan Sacerdoti, thank you for coming in and joining me. And it is very, very grim news that we get from Israel and from Gaza. But what happened